Alright, assigning vertex groups. So what we're going to do now is join this structure with the bones. So we're going to go into wireframe, so I can highlight the wireframe, and then hold shift and highlight the bones. And then we're going to go Control P on the keyboard, and we're going to do with empty groups. Okay, what that just did is if we now go into pose mode and rotate this one bone, you can see that it rotates, but nothing follows it, because these vertex or vertices do not know what to follow, what bone, and in what order. So that's our next mission. Well, I made this to be, kind of challenging in the fact that it's broken up into different parts. Okay, that way you get familiar with vertex groups and how they work. And I made it in such a manner where if you try the automatic feature, because you've seen that probably in there, if you went to object, you went to highlight both of these in object mode, this, then this, and you hit Control P, there's an automatic weights too. If you use that, it's just going to be as bad for you, because I wanted you to know how to do vertex groups. Okay. So let's go into edit mode on the mesh. Let's go to vertice and hit L. Okay, this will highlight this big chunk of matter, and this would be attached to the arm itself, the very root. If we go here to vertex or vertice group, it's kind of like the object data, but much of the vertex group stuff is hidden in here. Since I named all the bones, look what happened. Nice, neat, organized. So this chunk of matter, I just have it highlighted in the vertices, highlight the bone, and then hit assign. Let's do that over here. This time, it's going to be attached to bicep. And look at here, I have wrist. What? Or do I? I do not. I don't have wrist at all. I have bicep and bicep 1. Okay, how do I fix this? Well, very easy. We just hop into edit mode on the bone, and we look at this bone right here in bone mode, and make sure it's left underscore wrist. So that's how you keep hopping back and forth. You can hop between edit mode to name bones, then to object mode to highlight mesh, then back to edit mode on the mesh. So learn how to jump from thing to thing, or you will have a hard time with this. Another way you could do this is highlight the actual object via edges. So L and L on the keyboard will allow you to highlight these, and then go back into the vertex group. Again, this attaches to bicep. This one, same thing. This one actually stays stationary. So it's a bicep. And so is this object. I'm going to switch over to solid mode so you can see this stuff. Okay. Just to test things out, I like to go in every once in a while and go to pose mode. So to do that, again, learn to hop around. On wireframe, I can highlight the bone structure in object mode, and then I can go to pose mode. So I should be able to rotate this, and it rotates everything. I should be able to grab the next one and rotate it, and you can see it's only rotating those one parts, and that's it. I'm hitting undo for every time. But when I hit the next chain, it doesn't know what to do because I haven't assigned things to it yet. So every once in a while you should test this stuff out to make sure it's all working correctly. Well, what happens? The next set here will handle Oops. These. This. Just like that. So this big huge chunk of matter right here is handled via the wrist. And then the individual things are handled via fingers. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Again, we're going to have to go into wireframe. I'm going to hit 7 on the keyboard so it's easier to see this. Now, it's going to be really hard to see some of this stuff. I know that, you know that. But the solid matter that does not move needs to be attached to the first finger. So index 1, assign it. Mid 1, assign it. Ring 1, assign it. Pink 1, assign it. Then lastly, thumb 1, assign it. All right, well, there we go. There's that. Now, this next bone, what is it? Sometimes it's hard to understand what the next bone is. So to highlight that, you just go into pose mode and check it out. This is called pink 2. That means I can go back to object mode, hop into the mesh, go back to edit mode, and I know pink 2 or index 2 or mid 2 all get assigned to the next form. In this case, it looks like edges would be easier, so I'm going to highlight the edge there. That's this right here. This is the pinky joint. This is probably where you're going to make the most mistakes. So know that there's a remove too in case you accidentally assign it to the wrong joint. Ring 2. Mid 2. And you can see why we named all these things. It would be total chaos, absolute total chaos if you didn't. This one is index 2. And this is thumb 2. Okay, last. And this has a couple different parts of here to make up this finger. So it has 3 parts. The 3 parts, this is the index. So that's going to be index 3. Okay, now let's test that out. Let's go into this, go into pose mode, and I should be able to rotate this bone, and it rotates that finger. Good. Amazing. It worked. Not really, but. Object mode again, highlight the mesh. I can't tell you how hard it is for a new student to jump between things. You got to experience inside a classroom. You really do. Like to be able to highlight or jump into one form or the next, like object versus bones versus finding the name of the bone versus assigning the bone to the vertex. Those things we take for granted as computer users really do get kind of lost on some students. So I would say to those students that have a hard time jumping between things, you must take your time and start thinking through how you're going to memorize all this information. And practice. Man, that's another thing. I mean, you only get good at this stuff by practicing. It doesn't come naturally. There is no magical, if I do this stuff that the instructor tells me, it's going to make me the ultimate game lord. That doesn't happen either. You get good because you actually do this stuff. All right, now there's going to be one part that I didn't do, and it's these little parts right here. Okay, so I have to understand where these are going to go, and I would say this would probably be part of the wrist. I don't want those to technically pivot. I want the fingers to pivot underneath them, so I'm going to assign these to wrist. There we go. All said and done. So in object mode, and Z on the keyboard allows you to switch between wireframe and solid. So if you want to quickly do that rather than hit this, you can. Those who have been with me long enough know that I'm not a real big hotkey guy, especially in videos, because it just kind of hurts the student to know that if I just did that, they're like, whoa, what did you just push? So, all right, look at that. Fingers rotating just fine. Again, I usually hit undo over everything. Yeah, and I'll test each one of these joints and kind of see to make sure everything's moving, rotating correctly. Oh, I see something. See? I wouldn't have seen that before. So there's a stray wolf here. Okay, I do believe it's this guy. So and he was moving with pink 3. So I'll remove him from pink 3 and then add him to thumb 1. Tab, pose mode. There we go. No more moving with him. Good. All right, so the next step is just very boring. It's just making sure everything rotates correctly and how that works. A lot of times I'll go up here. That way I could just quickly highlight the bone. So if I highlight wrist, does that rotate just the wrist? Forearm. What's forearm compared to wrist? Well, look at that. Those two bones are actually backwards. Okay, so this should be wrist, which means all these other things should adhere to that. Those are things I'm talking about. So this one is actually forearm. And I'll have to name it 4 for right now, because if I name it forearm, there's already a forearm. And this is wrist. Okay, so if I bend wrist, what happens? Well, wrist should have all this stuff attached to it. Okay, so I'll go into the bone or vertex data and assign that to wrist. Okay. Now let's hop back out. Grab wrist. Does it rotate? That is correct. Okay. I see little parts that need to be hooked up to it though, like these things. Now I can assign all these at once to it if I wanted to. So here's wrist again, because I switched those two bone names together. Assign that. Okay, rotate the wrist. Good. And this piece right here would go on forearm. Okay, again, hopping around. Okay, when I rotate forearm, yes, it rotates the forearm. When I rotate wrist, yes, it rotates the wrist. And I'll just work up my way up the food chain. There we go, that's moving correctly. And this is moving correctly. Good. All right, please meet me in the next video where I explain some more.